officers interdicting and getting more of the fentanyl coming up here? Mainly, I know from Mexico and China, there was a big story. Sessions announced that they broke up a ring involving individuals who are using the internet. And I think most people understand how carfentanil is getting here. I mean, I think most people, it's manufactured either in China or Mexico and brought up here. Have we had better interdiction of through HITA or through the U.S. Attorney's Office or your office?
I'll speak subject to correction from the Milwaukee police officers and detectives who are here. From our perspective in the DA's office, we have not seen a great number of referrals for possession of carfentanil or distribution of carfentanil. I haven't seen a lot of seizures of carfentanil. But there's some reasons for that in terms of the analysis that comes through the crime laboratory and through field testing. And heroin tests for heroin.
Right.
Other drugs will test. If something is sent for the crime laboratory, there may be a very, very small amount of fentanyl in it, and it may not reach the levels necessary to trigger the analysis and trigger a report to us. So it may be that some of the samples that we've seen do have fentanyl or carfentanil in it. It's just not being reported. In addition, we only send things to the crime laboratory for testing if we think the matter is going to be proceeding to trial. So if an individual is arrested with a drug and pleads guilty to that, for the most part, it's not tested, and then we wouldn't know whether there was some degree of carfentanil in it or not. But again, I speak subject to correction from the HITA and MEG officers.
Well, I know your officers are here. I mean, if you want to speak to it, I mean, do you have enough adequate resources, or is there a targeted team looking at trying to stop the interdiction?
Good morning.
Introduce yourself for the record. Good morning.
Good morning. Captain Alex Ramirez, Milwaukee Police Department, assigned to the Narcotics Division.
Yeah.
Work out of HITA.
Lieutenant Shaun, Doyne, Narcotics Division, also assigned to HITA.
So, I mean, you're on the street. You know what's going on.
An increase in, especially in the overdose deaths, of where there's been some fentanyl and carfentanil in the deaths itself. I believe we've had 7 carfentanil deaths this year alone. Why that is, I think it's just a better product that's being put out there by some of these drug trafficking organizations. It's for a better high. People seek a better high for it. And so thus we get that. When it comes to the interdiction part of it, we take precautions just like anybody else.
Right.
If it's suspected, carfentanil, fentanyl, we then send it to the straight crime lab, and we have to wait for the results if we have a case to proceed on it.
But I mean, I obviously don't want to jeopardize any ongoing investigation. But is there something where we're seeing where a known dealer or dealers are shipping it up or bringing it up here because of the increase? I mean, what I've been told, what I heard on the street is that, people want, you would ask, well, why do people want to take fentanyl? I mean, they're dying left and right, but it's like chasing the dragon. So it's like a lot better high. It's much quicker. It's much more stronger. So the dealers are saying, hey, I have fentanyl in this heroin. I mean, they're selling it that way. So I guess, do you have any inside information that, well, you're not going to share the inside information, but is there anything that you think we need to do as a task force or individual to help you in terms of your mission of trying to, stop the interdiction of fentanyl getting into the streets? I mean,
I think right now the challenge is that determining where the point is that it's cut with the fentanyl.
Yeah.
7% is kind of like the most you could cut it, so anything over that could be considered lethal. It's very difficult, though, to determine where that actually is originating. Likely it's not from typically down south or in Mexico. It's somewhere in between the process, so it's being cut at some point. Or what we have seen slightly is situations where it's straight fentanyl, they're cutting it and then basically saying it's heroin. So we have had some cases like that.
Okay. Well, I assume you saw the story yesterday about the internet sales. People can buy, I think I was reading, like $2,000 worth of fentanyl and turn it into $200,000. So there's a huge profit motive, and of course the cartels are involved. I'm just wondering what the U.S. government, U.S. Attorney's Office is doing to stop the interdiction of getting it into here, based on the evidence, not just Milwaukee, but nationally. It's just an explosion of people dying. So if there is a point in time where you think there needs to be more resources, I'd like to know. So.
Alderman Rainey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Officers, while you're at the table, I wanted to take a moment to ask you about your experience with Promethazine Codeine, which is referred to as lean or SERP in the community. What's been your experience with that? Like, what's going on? I know it's very prevalent, but from a law enforcement standpoint, what have you guys experienced?
It's still out there. In fact, we recently received some. It goes through the mail. It goes through, people go out and they go to travel to different states to get it, but it's readily available. It's basically the cough syrup that has those ingredients in there, and it's very popular amongst the youth to use it.
Is there any tracking? How do you guys determine, like, the trends with drugs? Do you track what's going on in the community, what's being, utilized? How are you tracking so you can know exactly what's surging in the community?
Yeah, we recognize the trends. We follow the trends. Report out on the trends. We see what the drugs that are prevalent, like obviously the THC is still out there, like number one. You got your cocaine, which is still steadily there, and you got your heroin increase. And based on deaths, obviously people are dying from heroin or the combination or the mixture of the other opioids, the synthetic opioids, with that. So we do follow all those trends. We do report out on that. We look at our strategy for the following year on how we're going to, strategize and go after the mid to upper level drug deals, especially the ones that are violent.
And when you see an emergence of a drug that's new to the market, do you guys develop a strategy to address that and eradicate that drug from the community?
Yeah, just like a methadone is something that, not methadone, I'm sorry, the crystal meth. We know that sometimes it does it has been an introduction in Milwaukee. We do look at it, where's it coming from? Fortunately enough for Milwaukee, but unfortunate for some of the other counties, meth seems to be the issue here. Here in Milwaukee County, obviously the heroin or the synthetic opioids, which are now making an introduction into our system here. But we do go after the meth. We try to find out who's dealing it. We'll go after them. We'll try to prosecute them just like any other drug dealer.
Are gangs, is it more organized now or less organized? What are you seeing on the streets? Is in terms of whether it's a certain gang that's selling more of it or not, or what? What do you think is going on?
As far as the gangs go, it's not any particular gang that's selling, because when it comes, it's all about the making of the money. There's a lot of money that is involved in, especially in the heroin trade. Some of these operations are 24-hour operations. It's about the money, and you can have different people from different groups or different cliques that are partaking in this, and it's not so much the gang itself, like traditionally was once known. Whether it was on the south side or north side of Milwaukee, but they do partake in parts of this, but it's more up to the cartels that are running more of the show.
So the cartels are providing the supply, but the distribution network is it's fragmented and broken up. It's not as controlled by any one certain gang or anything like that.
That's correct. Here at least in Wisconsin, it's drug trafficking organizations, and that's what we look at. And it could be the makeup of multiple type of 5 or more individuals who are from different parts who have defined roles in the distribution or the selling of the drug. They may use street gangs, and they may use others to help distribute that.
Mm-hmm.
Just to add that, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to follow up with the cough syrup question. With the governor signing the bill on Tuesday requiring a prescription, do you see that having sort of an immediate effect, or do you think predominantly that comes from other distribution chains besides, a traditional pharmacy?
I know he had signed a number of different things for the prevention, and then more of the prevention, education, and treatment of.
One of them was to require.
Officer Ramirez, can you pull the mic up? Some people can't hear you.
Sure. Sorry about that. Thank you.
One of them was to require a prescription for the cough syrups with codeine. I just wondered, does that have an immediate effect, or does that take a long time? And
requiring the prescription is generally how it should be, and the person who gets the prescription are the ones who should be using it. Unfortunately, there are some illegal sales out there of prescriptions. We do have a group that deals with prescription or legal sales, or doctors that are involved in just writing scripts for anybody, which is our tactical diversion unit that takes care of that. But I think with the restrictions on some of the prescriptions, getting this stuff, what's going to happen, I think, especially if you're abusing it or addicted to it, they're going to go to a more cheaper, to a street drug, which is much cheaper and much readily available.
Thank you.
Are you concerned about one of the bills that was passed to really strengthen, and that was good legislation, to prohibit people from shopping pill doctors? All, Rainey, we're talking about that, which, people got hooked on these opiates through a legal narcotic, right? And they would shop pill doctors. Now we really have a larger system in place to prevent from pill shopping. So these people are still addicts, and now they can't get them, but that is now going to really cut off that supply from those doctors. So, are you thinking that there's going to be an increase? Because you heard the fire chief, most people who are buying the drugs in Milwaukee are coming from not even our county, coming from outside. And if they can't get their drug legally through a pharmacist, I think I'm a little worried that in the next 3-4 months, when all this kicks in, the people are going to say, well, I can't get my Oxycodone, I'm going to get something else, and I'm going to come down to Milwaukee, and there'll be an increase in more drug trade. Are you thinking about that, or?
Yeah, in fact, we had a conversation this morning on that specific issue as to where there's more restriction on doctors, more restriction on prescribing, doctor shop, and things like that. We feel that there will be an increase in the demand of street-level drugs. It's cheaper, it's readily available. They'll come in from different, Milwaukee's a big hub as far as, we are a major city, and they'll come in here and just like you see some of the deaths out in different parts of the county, they're coming into Milwaukee. They may be getting it here and then moving back out to their homes, but it's going to be readily available. I think there may be an effect on that where we may see an increase of.
Yeah, I would hope that we're talking to like the U.S. Attorney's Office and others about finding additional resources, because I also think you're going to see a substantial increase in robberies of pharmacies. Because there was one pharmacy in my district was robbed twice in 2 days.
Yeah. We have the robberies of the pharmacies as well as the burglaries of the pharmacies that we track quite closely. We look at the groups, and we work with our other partners who will investigate those incidents. We also work real close with the District Attorney's Office, with Karen, as well as the U.S. Attorney's Office on a regular basis.
And in terms of the mobile pharmacies, do you see an increase in that, or is it plateaued, or what are we seeing?
On the pharmacies, we had a rise in those burglaries and robberies, but it's kind of seemed to tail off recently. I think the overall effect, though, is that with all this tightening up on prescription regulations, the price of pills is going up. So now it's cheaper to buy the heroin. So that's what's pushing this. But the flip side, though, if you don't control that more, the gateway to all this is prescribing opioids. So it's kind of chicken and egg. It's kind of a balancing act to figure out where that's all going to fit in. Yeah. But I think right now, by doing that, our diversion, we have one person assigned from MPD on tactical diversion at the DEA, and they address the prescription type stuff, so they investigate doctors. And then it's not always a criminal matter, but they have a license. So if you prescribe meds, you have a license through the DEA. They can take administrative action that way. But there have been some large-scale operations that they've disrupted involving that.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Alderman Rainey.
I just wanted to extend the opportunity to the woman all the way in the back. I see she can't stay still in her seat at the moment. It seems like she has something to share for the conversation. Did you want to come to the table?
Good eye.
Yes.
You introduce yourself for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Ms Federico. I'm with the Drug Enforcement Administration out of Milwaukee, representing Bob Bell today.
Thank you for being here. Mm-hmm.
I don't know where you want to start, but you were talking about one of your
Dan Clark,
right, being assigned to our unit over the TDS. There's a lot of different things that you have talked about here at the table. You talked about the PDMP and having this big impact. The PDMP has been out there for a long time, and we had some impact initially when it started.
Can you pull the mic up a little closer? No problem.
And I don't know exactly what issue you want me to address, but some of the PDMP issues is, yes, it's very true, the doctors are going to have to check. It's going to be mandatory, but there are no consequences if the doctors do not check. And we have a lot of the doctors that are not looking at the PDMP, and if they do, the doctors that are pumping out the prescriptions for the oxy and the hydrocodone, and maybe now the promethazine,
Promethazine will
codeine,
probably-
which is going to
right.
happen, which is very limited to here in southeastern Wisconsin. We don't have that issue throughout the rest of the state. That's primarily here in
Wow.
southeastern Wisconsin. So I don't see that being as big. I don't see that we're going to have an increase in armed robberies and things that we did.
Good.
We had that rash here that got taken care of. You guys
Right,
did a
kind
wonderful
of.
job investigating it, and it was a couple groups of some little gang members, if I believe, right, or something like that. One big thing, the hydrocodone and the oxycodone are the big issues here in the state of Wisconsin. And here in Milwaukee, it's the oxycodone, which is the biggest issue. And yes, we are going to see some with doctors getting pressure to prescribe lower levels of it. The PDMP coming into place and people checking it more, that is going to shrink it, and it's going to pop up somewhere else. We just have to figure out where it's going to be. And some of our initial data is showing that Wisconsin, I don't know about Milwaukee County, but that Wisconsin now is increasing in amphetamine prescribing. So that may be something we want to kind of keep our eye on as a potential trend.
Right, and I think that throughout the country, specifically in the south, the border region, we've seen a lot of heroin and meth together. We also had a case where they were trying to disguise meth as cocaine, multi-kilos. That was in Kenosha County, I believe.
Yeah, and one of the other trends that's going around, not here right in Milwaukee proper, but in north and then out west, is that once law enforcement does their job and heroin is taken off the street a little bit, or they cut into some of the suppliers, what's coming back is meth, is what's making a resurgence in different areas. But anyway, we're getting off the target. But if there's any other questions you would like to ask about, that's fine. What my expertise is in the controlled substance pharmaceutical diversion area. That's what I've done for the last 28 years here in Milwaukee.
So you squeeze one side, something else comes in the other side. I mean,
Yes.
But that's really even on the supply side. The Mexican suppliers are also trying to get the meth in, because meth really, I mean, 10 grand a pound, I mean, that's a pretty low price compared to, let's say, heroin or cocaine. And, you know, some would say the effects last longer with meth. So I think throughout the state, we've seen quite a bit of that. As a result, the single pot meth lab isn't really happening as much, because there's a supply available for Mexican suppliers. They can do it more on a manufactured level. So it's getting here, it's cheaper. I mean, if you look back, what was meth going for like 10 years ago?
It was really cheap. Yeah, I don't even remember.
Right, so it's, and then one of the things with that was the whole Sudafed issue was
Yeah.
part of making meth, and so yeah, that's really kind of transformed a little bit.
so it really reinforces, I suppose, the importance of education to stop people from even beginning and
Absolutely.
working on that
Yes.
angle, because it seems like human nature the way it is. If you don't have one addictive substance, you'll figure out another way, and of course somebody will figure out a way to supply you it. So trying to break the chain is probably the big issue.
And a lot of it is education of the practitioners, and that's a lot of the different communities have done a really, really good job trying to get to those prescribers to let them start educating their patients about these products, not prescribing as many, so we don't have to take care to the back end with the take-back programs. That's a big part of it also.
Alderman Rainey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Earlier, I asked the officers about their experience with promethazine, codeine. You say you deal with prescription issues from a federal standpoint. Can you tell us a little bit about, what you've experienced here locally with that particular drug?
Yeah, locally, most of those kind of cases are kept at the local level. They typically are, they were signing the logbook and doing that type of way to get the promethazine with codeine, and then they would mix it with their, their Sprite and their Jolly Ranchers and make their lean, and it would be in this population that wasn't a registrant population that we handle, like our doctors and our pharmacists and our, mid-level practitioners and our PAs. So those were mostly cases that were conducted at the state level or through our tactical diversion squad, and I don't think they've even really run into, you guys have done most of those.
Right, in ours, primarily, we've seen it through our interdiction unit, so they're mailing it. I mean, I think, was that like a month ago? We got a pretty large seizure by that. I mean, I think there was like 24 bottles or something. But the promethazine isn't really new. I mean, without going into history, I don't know the dates, but there's some rappers that started out and one died, and that's kind of the history of it. But it's really kind of become sort of the in thing to be, sipping on your lean all day or whatever. So it's definitely out there, but there hasn't really been a lot of teeth to do anything about it. I guess that'd be the best way to put it.
Well, then you talk about the whole prosecution issue with it.
Correct, and that's the other challenge.
And you did talk about some of the administrative proceedings that we can take against our physicians that are over-prescribing and not prescribing in a legitimate manner, that puts Oxycodone and Hydrocodone on the street. And we do have a lot of those. I mean, the other issue we have is having prosecutions of physicians that are pumping pills on the street without people having legitimate medical problems. And that's an issue that we address all the time because nobody wants to put a doctor behind in jail.
Yeah.
That's going to have to be our last comment on this issue.